Recently, Conservatives put forward a motion to restrict access to health benefits for failed asylum claimants to emergency life-saving care only. And that motion was defeated by the Liberal government.
But why are we prioritizing failed asylum claimants over the well-being of our own at home? Could it be hiding a more insidious secret? Because in the US, massive revelations are coming out from systemic abuse coming from fake claimants, and you won't believe just how much this costs citizens each year. So why aren't Liberals rushing to uncover the same in Canada? One thing Liberals sure don't mind doing, though, is laughing in the face of democracy. With Mark Carney lashing out at Alberta, and worse, telling Canadians that their voices don't matter at all. What was he freaking thinking when he made these comments? And it's gone so bad that even Quebec is snapping back and questioning Carney. My name is Ali Dango, and this is The Right Call. Like, share, subscribe, hype this video up. Any interaction on this channel helps push the truth out, and maybe someday break that CBC-induced coma that so many Canadians are under. And if you haven't already, smash the subscribe button, because with C11, the government wants to make sure you don't see my content. Man, I can't believe he made those comments. It is very unlike a prime minister to divide like that. So stick around, you don't want to miss this. And by the way, if I sound a little bit under the weather, it's because I am. I got a man cold. It's the joys of having kids. They always get you sick. But jokes aside, have more babies. The world needs it. But for now, globe-trotting is a hallmark of the elites, and Carney sure embodies it. Hardly staying in Canada for a very long time.
You are heading to New York tomorrow. Yeah. What recent movement have you seen on U.S. trade issues, if at all, and do you expect any movement with your meetings tomorrow?
Well, the meetings tomorrow these are private sector meetings. These are with a series of institutions that are either heavily invested in Canada, interested in investing in Canada, and it's sensible to give the story. It's a very efficient use of time to give the story. A lot has changed in Canada, and we're moving forward at speed. You just have to just refer back to what we're discussing here. $500 billion of defense-related investment in the course of the next decade in Canada. Even in New York, that's real money. That's of interest, and there's opportunities to partner, and those will be the discussions. It's not a trade mission in that sense, in terms of trade negotiations, in terms of the overall...
Well, no confirmation on whether he's going to be meeting Brookfield or any of his subsidiaries, however. And sadly for Canadians, this is not a trip for trade negotiations or even to negotiate a trade agreement with the US. Not that those things matter, right? Funny, isn't it? The US is a big bad wolf, but the private sector coming from the US, however, well, that warrants a trip from the Prime Minister himself. Not a trade delegation, not the ambassador, not the Minister of Finance, not the Minister of Foreign Affairs, not even the Minister of Industries, no, but the Prime Minister himself. These must be pressing matters, right? Right? Not like we have any pressing domestic issues at home to deal with. Not like Canadians are struggling and having it rough.
Wars in the Middle East and in Ukraine. An oil price around $100 a barrel. And the price at the pump? $1.38. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about 2014. Prime Minister Stephen Harper was in power and wars were raging in the Middle East, both Syria and Iraq. The Russians had just invaded Crimea, and the global oil price was $100 a barrel, $10 higher than it is today. And yet, at the pump, the price was 40 cents a liter cheaper than it is today. What explains the difference? Well, let's go further. The United States, south of the border right now, Americans are paying in Canadian dollars and in liters 17 cents a liter lower than Canadians. They have the same global oil price, they have the same global factors like the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, and yet it's 17 cents a liter cheaper south of the border. Why? Well, sure, there are global effects that have influenced prices lately, but the bigger and the longer term cost are the Liberal government effects. One, they continue to impose a newly renamed and rebranded carbon tax, this time 7 cents a liter, rising to 17, but a broader tax that, unlike the earlier one, does not exempt farmers, fishers, or other food production. Two, the GST rises on the cost of a liter of gas as that cost goes up because it is a percentage-based tax. Three, we have an extremely weak dollar, and this is very unusual. Normally when the world has high oil prices, Canada has a strong dollar because we had so much oil to sell onto the world market, but because the share of our economy made up of our oil exports is down, the link between oil prices and Canadian dollars is reduced, which removes the protection that consumers had from global shocks 10 years ago.
Crazy what 10 years of liberal government can do. For me, it's the contrast, really. The price of oil isn't shocking by any metric. I remember when I started driving back in 2008, the price of oil was actually $134 per barrel. And yet, the price of gas at the pump was well under $1.50 a liter. It was closer to like $1.40 a liter. Well, today, oil is actually at $90 a barrel. That is considerably less. And yet, the price at a pump, over $1.80 a liter. This is a testament to two things. The ever-growing taxation on Canadians, now through the clean fuel regulation, which, like Poilievre said so eloquently, is just a carbon tax, and our weak economy. That's one thing he didn't mention because he just focused on oil prices. But the reality is this: a weak economy equals a weak currency. Carney can't blame global trends for what's happening at home anymore. It is purely driven by horrible domestic economic policies. And then he goes and posts something like this. On June 5th, the one-time GST HSC credit top-up will be hitting the bank accounts of more than 12 million Canadians. With the Canada Grocery and Essential Benefits, we're making sure you have the support you need to get ahead, saving families up to $1,800 a year. Dude, which self-respecting, prosperous nation needs to send money to its people so that it can afford basic necessities like food? And what worries me so much is that the average Canadian here is probably rejoicing, like, whoop whoop, free money. Boys, Canadians should be mad that it's come to this, but alas, give them food and give them entertainment, and they will remain docile forevermore. We might want to take a look at what our American neighbors are doing to root out fraud, which is a massive drain on the economy and the country's finances.
Not abiding by our laws, and the amount that has been fleeced from us is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. I believe, based on what I've seen and what I've heard, is that we could balance the federal budget if the only dollars that went out of the Treasury went to individuals who are properly, lawfully, correctly eligible to receive them. And that ultimately is going to be what we have to do as a country. In the meantime, because of the Vice President's leadership, you are seeing the most muscular, robust, aggressive, dedicated, determined, and speedy effort to shut down criminal fraud that has not only ever occurred in the history of this country, but in any developed nation. So thank you.
Bro, I'm freaking dying here. Oh my god. Comment down below if you can hear it in my voice. It's horrible, but I'm gonna soldier through this. Imagine that if they rooted out fraud within the US government and people abusing entitlement programs, which they are not eligible to receive, they could balance the federal budget. And they're pushing it even further.
One of the things we've realized in combating fraud is that the resources of the federal government, while vast, can be supplemented and aided by a lot of the people who know best what's happening in their states, which is the attorneys general represented here today. And they have a lot of legal resources, they have a lot of prosecutorial resources, and of course they have the desire to prevent fraud as much as we do. And so I appreciate these leaders for being here because we're going to work together, state and federal government, to try to combat fraud.
So JD Vance is hosting at the White House a roundtable with a bunch of state attorney generals trying to make a plan happen to root out fraud at a federal level, but also at a state level. Important to note that every single Democrat attorney general is absent. Every single one of them. They all refused to attend JD Vance's anti-fraud roundtable at the White House. Republicans showed up, every single one of them, and yet, even though JD Vance invited all state attorney generals to come, the Democrats refused. They just said no. To me, it sounds like they're pro-fraud, especially considering that nearly 24 of these Democrat state AGs cited time constraints or conflicting schedules as a reason not to go, but yet the Republicans found the time to go. I don't know. Fraud is kind of like under the purview of what an attorney general would, reasonably be considered to do in his free time. And sadly, the parallels with the Canadian Liberals are exactly why I'm bringing this up. As we are discovering within our own government, $200 million going for a concrete pad that a private company, Maritime Launch Services, with insiders that are very, very close to liberal elites, leases a concrete pad from the provincial government of Nova Scotia for $15,000 a year, while releasing it to the federal government at a tune of $20 million a year. I bet you this is not fraud, obviously. And then we have the old age security fraud that is happening at scale with foreign individuals coming to Canada, staying within the country just long enough to qualify for it, and then after that they leave the country only to collect old age security for the rest of their lives while living abroad. And let's not even touch on the visa frauds that are happening left and right in our own government, losing track of who's even overstaying their visas within Canada. And then there's of course the native reservations that are gobbling billions of dollars every year, and yet the quality of life for the people on the reserves are stagnating. So where's the money going? Or even this little gem.
Recently, Conservatives put forward a motion to restrict access to health benefits for failed asylum claimants to emergency life-saving care only. And that motion was defeated by the Liberal government. And a Liberal MP, as well as, frankly, pundits on political panels, said that that issue wasn't a problem, that there wasn't data to support that position. Well, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a report this morning that shows, unfortunately, the Conservatives were right. So this morning, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a fairly damning report on the interim federal health program's costs. And this is the program that was designed to be a program to provide temporary health benefits to legitimate refugees who are fleeing war zones. Over the last decade, under the Liberals' failed asylum policies and a severely broken asylum system, the costs of that program have ballooned over 1,200%. But we have more data today on how that breaks down, particularly for failed asylum claimants. So nearly 74,000 failed asylum claimants are accessing coverage through this program, which provides benefits that Canadians don't have access to, like vision care, like physiotherapy. The Parliamentary Budget Officer also showed that the costs will continue to skyrocket. The backlog is continuing to grow. The amount of time that even bogus asylum claimants spend accessing these programs continues to increase, and the numbers are astronomical. I mean, like, seeing this today, $822 million was spent in fiscal year 2024-2025. And you look at some of the services, counseling services have increased by 11%, costing taxpayers $38.7 million last year.
Counseling services, of course. Asylum claimants should have counseling services given to them for free at, the cost of us. While we don't even have access to this, it's mind-boggling. This should infuriate every taxpayer in Canada. If we only knew the scale at which we are being defrauded. But alas, unlike Americans, Canadians don't enjoy accountability or the feeling of knowing that they're not being taken advantage of quite as much. It's even worse than that. Our elected officials actually have contempt for us, for our voices, and for democracy. Carney was caught saying things that he shouldn't be saying, revealing his true thoughts regarding the Alberta separation.
Yeah, Prime Minister, I'm hoping you can clarify some remarks that you made after the scrum on Monday. When you were leaving the press conference, you spoke with Minister Robertson, and I want to read what you set out. What are you doing? This is stupid. You've got an off-ramp. Take it. That to me sounds like you're talking about Danielle Smith and the Alberta referendum question.
I was talking to Minister Robertson.
But can you clarify what you were discussing at that point in time? Because the scrum was about what Ms. Smith had done.
No.
You can tell he's nervous. He got caught. I'll show you the video in 1 second, by the way. I found the video, but let's see his half-assed answer.
It was about Minister Robertson. Look, I have, I think... If I'm going to take your question about the relationship with Canada and Alberta, Canada and the federal government and the provinces, and we practice cooperative federalism. We work together. What we're focused on is making the federation work. We're doing that with Alberta with respect to a variety of aspects of energy. It's much more than a pipeline. It's nuclear. It's interconnects with British Columbia. It's a new industry of carbon capture. It's restarting the renewable market.
Carbon capture, oh my god, the failed policy that brings no value to the economy. But hey, the G-Fans crew, the G-Fans mafia loves it. Brookfield loves it. Carbon capture is the biggest scam ever.
It's getting a carbon market that actually works, that other provinces can be able to join.
Why a carbon market? Every oil-producing country does not have a carbon market. They're all moving away from it. It's over. But we're gonna physically and metaphorically castrate ourselves on the altar of a carbon market. Oh my god. I can't.
So we can broaden out a national carbon market. That's what we're doing there. We're here talking about defense industrial strategy, the benefits of the announcement we just made around the negotiations led by Secretary of State Fuhr and President Guzman on the Global Eye, and the fact that will bring a third of the production of those aircraft.
Are you going to answer the question, Carney? Are you going to answer it? Because you've been dancing around it.
To Canada, of the global production, a minimum of a third, to Canada, benefits for supply chains in Quebec and also across the country. That's what we're focused on, and that's the thing.
That was not about the previous.
That's my answer is my answer. Thank you.
Oh my god, even the journalist said, oh yeah, but that's not what I asked. And Carney's answer, that was my answer. Oh my god, the contempt. Now, this is the moment in question when he made those comments.
Back up. What are you doing? This is stupid. You've done awesome. Thank you. So I think that the headlines of what he's doing is enough. So understand it. I will raise it. Say, Prime Minister, it's not consistent.
Yeah, I don't think he knew that this was being recorded. Anyways, the last thing Alberta Separatists need to hear right now is a Liberal Prime Minister calling a referendum stupid. He might not realize it, but this is antagonizing Albertans right into the hands of the sovereignty movement. And I want to bring back again how when asked about it, he just snapped and ignored it and then got a little mad when he was pressed on it again. Carney hates being challenged. It's a personality trait of his, and it's been confirmed privately by one of my sources that works in the government. This guy, Carney, loves to be right. He loves for people to say, yes, sir, and not be challenged. So behind that polished image, which is always being protected at all costs by the mainstream media, he seems to have an ego that rivals Napoleon's. And apparently he also has his height. In case you didn't know, Carney is a fairly short man. So who knows? Maybe such hubris will also be like Napoleon, Carney's downfall. But this is not the only posturing he's taken against Alberta, being so cavalier as saying outright that a majority vote would not be enough for the Canadian government to recognize the referendum as valid.
Is 50 plus 1 enough?
No, it is not. It is not. For under a Clarity Act, it is absolutely not. And I would just recommend that you read the Clarity Act. It's very clear. Not surprisingly, the Clarity Act is very clear. And a determination, and there's a series of conditions which I responded in the House for the record.
Is 50 plus 1 enough?
I gave a very clear
Is
answer
50
on the
plus
clarity.
1?
I gave. Just to be clear, because it is a question about a question. I mean, it's it's explicit in the question that it's not a binding referendum. This is what I expected, but as I said in French, that as Prime Minister on particular issues of a constitutional nature, I like to make sure I have the official advice before us, which is why yesterday I was careful in terms of.
Is 50 plus 1 enough?
No, it is not. It is not. For under a Clarity Act, it is absolutely not. And I would just recommend that you read the Clarity Act. It's very clear. Not surprisingly, the Clarity Act is very clear. And a determination, and there's a series of conditions which I responded in the House for the record.
Is it me, or does it sound a little arrogant the way he answered, saying, I would recommend you read the Clarity Act? And not surprisingly, the Clarity Act is very clear. So what does the Clarity Act actually say? Well, the key points of the legislation includes the following. 1, giving the House of Commons the power to decide whether a proposed referendum question was considered clear before the public vote, which to me is just ironic. The whole point of federalism and democracy is letting the provinces dictate their own future. So now all of a sudden, a other level of government gets to have a say in provincial matters. But I digress. 2, specifically stating that any question not solely referring to secession was to be considered unclear. Okay, fair enough. I mean, anyone that remembers the 1995 referendum in Quebec would know that the question that was being asked was a little bit weird. I mean, you tell me. Do you agree that Quebec should become sovereign after having made a formal offer to Canada for a new economic and political partnership within the scope of the bill respecting the future of Quebec and of the agreement signed on June 12, 1995? And it doesn't sound any better in French, by the way, okay? The French version, believe me, is just as confusing. 3, giving the House of Commons the power to determine whether a clear majority had expressed itself following any referendum vote, implying that some sort of supermajority is required for success. It doesn't say you need a supermajority, it just says you need to have a clear majority, which again is super up to interpretation. But what Carney said to the reporter saying, well, it's clear in the Clarity Act that, you need more than a majority. No, it just says a clear majority. To me, a clear majority is 50% plus 1. That's a clear majority. It's not a half majority, it's a clear majority. If they wanted a supermajority, they should have said so. They should have said 60%, 66%, 75%. They didn't. 4, stating that all provinces and the Indigenous people were to be part of the negotiation. Okay, well, it's Canada. What did you expect? 5, allowing the House of Commons to override a referendum decision if it felt the referendum violated any of the tenets of the Clarity Act, which is insane. It's giving more power to the federal government than the provinces. And I really wonder on the constitutionality of that, because this overrides everything you believe in federalism. And lastly, the secession of a province of Canada would require an amendment to the Constitution of Canada. Fair enough. That I kind of understand. So no, ironically from my perspective, the Clarity Act is not very clear, but it is typical Canadian legislation, to be honest. It's designed to be purposely vague, gray, ambiguous, and to let the courts interpret things whenever it comes to it. It's a grievance I personally have with the Canadian legislation and legal system compared to the US, which tends to have very black or white kind of laws, right? The law is specifically pointed and they recognize it can always be amended. That's the whole point of a law. It can be amended if you don't like it anymore. But in Canada, we like to make it very, very, very ambiguous, let the courts decide, and not really change the laws that often. Canada is just 50 shades of gray, apparently. Just not the fun, kinky kind. No. Although we are kind of being shackled and chained up in some form of dungeon somehow. So, maybe. And this posturing by Carney is not only pissing off Albertans, but it's starting to really annoy the Bloq Quebecois. And I think the last thing Carney needs right now is more enemies in the House.
Respecting democracy means avoiding interfering in referendum questions, but mostly it means avoiding interfering in the citizens' response. A clear majority is 50% of the votes plus one. The Prime Minister knows this. All his laws are passed with 50% plus one. His majority depends on 50% plus one. Even his parliamentary secretary for justice said the rule is 50% plus one.
Man, I'm starting to like the Bloq Quebecois, okay? I am absolutely not normally in agreement with them, but that's a fire speech right there. It's really holding it up straight to his face. I love it.
That is democracy, except for referenda because of the Clarity Act. Will the Prime Minister repeal this authoritarian overreach? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, you have to respect democracy. You have to respect parliamentary legislation.
You gotta respect democracy. But let me just manufacture a majority in the House of Commons through undemocratic means. The irony, man, come on, I hope people see through this.
And the decisions of the Supreme Court of Canada. Under the Clarity Act, the House of Commons must consider the following factors to establish this determination of a clear vote: the scope of the majority that are valid, expressed in favor of the successionistic option, and the percentage of eligible electors who took part in the referendum. It is not 50% plus one. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord.
What I don't understand is that Carney right now has a majority in the House of Commons from about roughly 30% of eligible voters' voice in the country. And yet, he seems to be more than happy to take that majority. But he dares look at you in the eyes and say that 50% plus one is not enough of a majority to make your voice be heard, which is more voices behind an idea, behind a proposal, than his government has, which is now effectively a dictatorship in Canada because he's got no opposition. He's got a majority in the House. That is definitely something you got to think about here.
Mr. Speaker, there is no place in a democracy for a law that does not respect the will of the people expressed by 50% of the votes plus one. There's no place in a democracy for a law that overturns the people's decisions by claiming after the fact that either the question or the result of the vote was not clear enough. There is no place in a democracy for a law that flouts the rules of the ballot when the result just doesn't suit the government. This is an authoritarian overreach we must avoid. Will the Prime Minister finally repeal the anti-democratic law on referendum clarity? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, we respect the laws of Canada. The Clarity Act is clear. At the same time, we respect the will of Quebecers, that is to build a strong, resilient Quebec within a strong and resilient, independent Canada.
And you know what? Carney is not making friends even at the provincial level. We have Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, the leader of the Separatist provincial party, Parti Quebecois, who is slated, by the way, to become the next premier of Quebec in the upcoming October elections. And this is what he had to say to Carney.
I don't think we heard your reaction since Danielle Smith announced that she'll start the process for a future and potential referendum. How do you react about this? What's happening in Alberta?
I'm kind of surprised at what Carney said. Mark Carney seemed to be willing to give many things to Alberta in exchange for some peace, and I think the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, is just doing her job as a Premier, saying that, of course, they are free to consult their population, and of course, they're a Parliament free of making any laws that they deem fit for their objectives. So for Mark Carney to all of a sudden start saying that it's a bluff, it's dangerous, I think it's really out of line, and I'm not sure where that is heading, but let me make clear that in the case of Quebec, our laws are clear, the history of the two referendums are very clear. We are free to consult our population at any time, and there's no blackmail or any comment that will change that principle. And I'm pretty sure that it's the same reasoning in Alberta right now.
Well, right now, Carney is dealing with the separation in Alberta, and he might soon have to deal with the separation in Quebec as well. And look, I've never been a big believer that Quebec could be sovereign, at least could succeed as a sovereign nation for many, many, many reasons. And I'm not going to dive into those reasons right now. But the more Carney likes to step on the rights of the provinces, which I find are important to safeguard because provinces know what's best for their people much more than what the federal government does, the more, if such a referendum was to come in Quebec, and I'm from Montreal, I might just vote yes, just in a way to stick it to Carney. And maybe also to help Alberta, because if we have two provinces that are negotiating with the federal government, they can help and support one another. Who knew? Alberta, the province that hates Quebec the most, might just end up being its greatest ally and vice versa. So, isn't fate interesting? And with Carney's majority falling apart, and with the departure of Minister Guilbeault from not only the cabinet, but now the caucus of the Liberal as well, and we have Nate Erskine-Smith, who is also resigning as an MP, and then there's a third MP whose name I'm forgetting right now, there's a very real chance that the Liberals go back to a minority government come summertime. Who would have known? The first to manufacture a majority through shady deals, and also the first to lose it through people crossing the floor. These fractures in our federation might just be too much for him to handle. He'll continue to arrogantly push against it, though, because that's his character. And he's going to say, this is my way or the highway. And sadly, the highway might not lead to where he wants to go. If you've enjoyed this report and want to find a way to get yourself involved, aside from liking, sharing, commenting, subbing, hyping this video, you want to go a step further, well, I do have a Patreon. The link is in the description below. It's $8 a month, and any proceed helps me spend more time doing research, putting out videos, holding truth to power. And if you want to also just make a one-time donation, there's a link for PayPal down there. Everything helps so much, and my heart goes out to anyone who wants to help and support. For the time being, if you want to see the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, call out the globalists straight to their face in the most epic smackdown ever, well, click on the link right here, the video right here. I break it down for you. It's incredibly enjoyable. A little guilty pleasure of mine. For the time being, though, I'm going to go slowly rot away with this man cold, and my name is Ellie Daniel. I'll see you next time.